Let's start with tokenization. It's something that you're deeply passionate about, and we talk about it in the context of tokenizing public equities, but you also talk about this idea of tokenizing the private markets, really democratizing access both to what venture capital funds are able to do, but also to like some of these private companies that are just closed off from so many investors. Talk to me though about what it takes to make that vision a reality with respect to US policy, what needs to change to get there?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of digging into this, and we've actually been engaging with the SEC Crypto Task Force as well as the administration. And it's our belief actually that we don't even need congressional action to make tokenization real. The SEC can just do it, and they can do something akin to what they did a few decades ago with Reg ATS. They can issue exemptive relief from certain securities laws in lieu of formal rulemaking. And this is kind of what we're engaging with them about. I think that, and I think they're excited. They're excited, and everyone seems to want this to happen. So it's my hope that by the end of the year, we'll have some more clarity on how to actually tokenize securities. Private companies is kind of a different thing. And as you mentioned, private company is very important because if you're a retail investor in the US, right now, you can't invest in SpaceX or OpenAI or countless other companies that have grown from basically nothing to hundreds of billions in valuation, all in private markets, while at the same time, you're free to invest in meme coins. And now, I'm a fan and supporter of meme coins, but I think these two things cannot coexist, where SpaceX and OpenAI are too risky, but you can do whatever you want in the meme coin world. So for that, we need a complete rethink of the accreditation rules. We basically need to make them much more self-certification based, where I, as a retail investor, can say, I understand the risks, I want to be able to invest in startups, and I think if we can figure that out, it'll unlock a huge amount of innovation and wealth creation for the US and overseas as well.
You mentioned that the SEC was on board with potentially changing some of the rules around public equities. When you say they, are you talking about Paul Atkins, Commissioner Purser? How are those conversations looking?
Well, if you look at Commissioner Purse's public statements, she's very keen on modernizing the infrastructure. And I think a lot of the details need to be worked out, but I'd say Crypto Task Force within the SEC and administration is open to the idea of tokenizing equities. And our hope is that a tokenized equity can be treated sort of like pari passu a traditional equity, and not like some kind of strange derivative. And that way they inherit all of the protections that the traditional securities equities take on.
And one key component of this, you talked about using stablecoins to help facilitate weekend settlement. Genius Act was making strides and then hit some roadblocks with Senate Democrats coming out with an amendment to potentially bar the president and other senior officials from being able to profit from stablecoin related ventures. Seems to be a very clear shot at the president and some of his ties to new crypto tokens that have come out, a stablecoin, also a meme coin. How worried are you about political infighting potentially derailing legislation here in the US?
I think it's a concern. I think that when it comes to stablecoin, it feels like that's on the right track. And then market structure is a big one. And what market structure will help achieve is clarity on what's a security and what's a commodity. Because you saw with Ethereum, for instance, there was quite a bit of, there was like a turf war between the SEC and CFTC about who regulates these things. And I think if that happens, business struggles because you don't know which regulator you're going to be dealing with or which rules you're going to follow. So market structure is incredibly important in just providing clarity on who regulates all these crypto assets and how, there's talk about something starting off as a security and then transitioning to a commodity. But when that happens, how exactly it works, right now is open to interpretation. So I think we have to solidify these things. But when it comes to tokenization, tokenization can be done without congressional action. That's our belief, and so we're less worried from tokenization standpoint.
I mean, in terms of like the larger play with tokenization, we've talked about it in the context of, tokenizing private equity markets and public equities, but I mean, thinking about other, like, tokenization of all real-world assets, whether it's mortgages or something else, does Robinhood become the arbiter for that? Like, do you see this ecosystem really expanding to everything you could possibly bring on chain?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things that you mentioned do fit into the securities regime, right? And so if you could tokenize securities, that provides a general framework to take any asset. It doesn't have to be public NMS equity. It can be a private stock. It can be a mortgage-backed security. And I think the advantages are huge. So outside the US, it's difficult to even access American products. And in the same way that stablecoin has led to an increase in US dollar adoption overseas, I mean, in some of these countries with rapidly devaluing currencies, stablecoin through crypto rail has become the preferred way of getting access to dollars. I think in the same way, tokenized securities will be the default way to gain exposure to US stocks and also other US assets. So it could further the dominance of US companies globally and, potentially help capital formation, because if I'm an entrepreneur starting a company and I could plug into a global network of capital to raise money for my venture, I would make use of that. I think many early stage entrepreneurs would. So you could have an explosion of new ventures being created, which I think would be amazing. So I think there's a huge societal benefit for the entrepreneur, a benefit for citizens of countries outside the US that might not have robust capital market systems, might not have local assets to invest in that are as attractive. So I think it's going to happen, and I'm very optimistic that we're kind of putting the pieces in place to do this.
And you've also talked about blockchain infrastructure just being, 10x more efficient, or just more cost effective when it comes to running the business. Is that something that you're thinking more about with respect to Robinhood on the back end?
Yeah, so two things. One is we're kind of one of the few players that runs a traditional securities business at scale and also a crypto business at scale. We're one of the largest in both of these things. So we can kind of compare the cost of processing a transaction the traditional way with all the counterparties and the traditional clearing and settlement cycle with blockchain. And it's like a huge difference, night and day. And so there's a huge benefit from that to move more and more of our technology onto public blockchain if it's allowed. The other thing is us using stablecoin ourselves as just like a corporation. And I've talked a little bit about that. And the benefit there is weekend settlement. So since we allow customers to trade crypto, if there's a huge crypto price movement that leads to a lot of volume over the weekend, that involves us sending US dollars to our counterparties over the weekend. And traditional banking rails aren't open over weekends. And so we either have to have huge lines of credit that are expensive to maintain with all of our counterparties, or we settle in stablecoin, which is much simpler, secure, and just runs around the clock. As long as the blockchain is running, we can actually send payments to our counterparties. So I think for us, it's a little bit idiosyncratic of a use case because not everyone is a trading platform, but you can imagine anyone in need of sending money from bank to bank over weekends will have a huge benefit from using stablecoin and crypto technology. And if we're able to figure out how to allow stablecoins to pay interest effectively to holders, then you turn it into an extremely competitive asset. Now you have a reason to hold your dollars in stablecoin rather than just converting it to stablecoin when you're sending it to someone.
Do you have any concern about, there's a Wall Street Journal report about how this consortium of the big Wall Street banks, JP Morgan, Citi, et cetera, are looking at a unified digital dollar if we get stablecoin legislation passed into law, partly in the spirit of combating foreign issuers like a Tether that controls more than 60% of the market. Do you think that that's a good thing to see TradFi intersect with the stablecoin world, or would you rather see it stay more crypto native?
I think that it's going to become easier to issue a stablecoin if you're any institution. And then the beauty of crypto is, with software, you can bridge from one asset to another, from one protocol to another. So an asset that is, on Arbitrum can be bridged to Solana or Ethereum base chain fairly easily, and the software for this is established. And also, if an asset's on a blockchain, people are free to create decentralized pools where you can trade one for the other. So I think the issue is getting initial adoption. The interoperability, as long as you're on the blockchain, is sort of like a given. Now, I'm not sure exactly what type of stablecoin is being contemplated here. I think that if it's an open stablecoin that can actually interoperate on public blockchains, I think that'll be necessary for adoption. And I also think that by and large, it'll be fungible with the other regulated stablecoins. So I don't see at first glance a huge concern.
What brought you to a very Bitcoin maximalist heavy environment? Why are you at this conference?
That's a good question. Let me think about that. Well, I like other cryptos, but I like Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin is singular in a way, right? Because nobody else, no other cryptocurrency can ever be the first cryptocurrency. So I think from that standpoint, it'll always maintain an outsized importance because it was the first. And so I think that's why you see this huge ecosystem building around it, right? I mean, thousands of people here, lots of companies are building on Bitcoin. Others are, building with crypto in general, but obviously Bitcoin has to be considered. So we've had our team at this conference in the past multiple times, and I've been hearing great things. So I thought I would stop by and see what all the fuss is about.
Last thing for you.
Great people here, though. Great people.
What's the ultimate ambition? Is it that people see Robinhood as you don't think of markets anymore as investing in the NASDAQ or in a NYSE stock? You're going to Robinhood. It doesn't matter what what you tokenize that public equity from, whatever the origin market was. It's more like, Robinhood becomes the arbiter of what's investable. What's the end goal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily want to be the arbiter of everything investable. I think that at the end of the day, investing is this extremely powerful innovation, right? I mean, it's lifted people out of poverty. You can actually attribute a lot of wealth and income inequality in this country to people investing their money and others not. And if we can just make that better, make it easier, offer more options, lower the cost, and kind of expand that on a global scale, I think Robinhood can be the platform where anyone can buy, sell, or hold any tradable asset or conduct any financial transaction. And we can do that by just being competitive, by offering low fees, a great customer experience, and actually helping customers manage this very personal and very important thing to them, which is their money. So, and I think we can build a successful company and continue to gain market share and grow. But yeah, it's to the benefit of just making people's money easier to deal with and putting them in more control over their finances.